Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is the founder of Cairn Guides. Today's guest is Jordan Larson. Jordan, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thanks for having me. An excellent execution of the pronunciation.
Thank
very
you.
nicely
Thank you.
done. It's not an easy thing to do, but thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on the show.
For sure, Jordan. And so we're going to just jump right into things here. I've got 4 questions for you as kind of part of a warm-up, just to kind of get the ball rolling and kind of get in that flow of conversation. So the first question that I have for you is, how do you start your day? Do you have some sort of specific morning routine that you like to stick to on most mornings?
Yeah, typically start my day, obviously waking up, but
For sure,
then I get into, I'll check our mobile app. I'll see if anybody newly downloaded that, to see if I need to reach out to any new clients, guides, anything like that. Have a little bit of breakfast, which typically incorporates bacon and eggs. It's not the healthiest thing in the world, but it's just kind of made its way into my routine. And then typically I'll have a sunrise hike, some type of midday hike. Maybe it's out here in Boulder or somewhere elsewhere. Stop for lunch, then kind of probably get a sunset hike in, wrap up the day with a real big dinner, and then go to bed. So nothing too extreme, pretty simple.
Okay, cool. But it's kind of right away though, to start off your morning is just kind of checking in to see if you have any new clients or anything like that in regards to your business. Is that correct?
Exactly. That's an ongoing thing. Like I said, I got a couple of emails waiting for me after this that I got to respond to. But it's kind of nice that a lot of the people that we work with, they're very lax, laid back. It's not that you have to respond to them in the first 3 minutes or they're gone.
Okay, cool. So, that's good, man, because that type of stuff can get a little stressful pretty quickly, can it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, in regards to the app, is it an app that you created specifically for Cairn Guides, or is it something else?
Yeah. No, it's actually kind of a little bit more of the bigger picture. And so we're trying to create essentially a network of outdoor experts that people can easily get in contact with. It's less screen time, more play time.
Cool.
So it's a really simple concept where essentially, whatever area you're in, right now we're just in Colorado, so we just have guides in Colorado, but we would like it eventually to be a worldwide thing.
Okay.
To where you can just really easily connect with outdoor guides. You can ask them questions, whether it has to do with gear, the area you're in, any other type of thing, because we really try to curate things based on people's abilities as well as what they're interested in. So whether it's the first time they've ever done this in their life, or they've been doing it for years and they're just looking for the coolest adventure possible, we screen our guides so that they are very well versed in the area that they work in, and so that they can really find the best adventure for the people that they work with, because we're really trying to get people hooked on this outdoor
for
thing.
sure.
There's so many cool things involved in it. So.
Now, just again in regards to specifically the app, was that is it an app that you yourself, Jordan, or kind of your team or a friend or something that did you guys create it on your own? Or?
No, we contracted for that. It's a company based out here in Denver, though, so they are local.
Cool.
It's this company that we've worked really close with. Piyush is our main engineer with that, and they've been really awesome.
Sweet.
Met up with them for tea and everything like that. They're a really cool group that's really kind of helped bring together what was initially a totally out there idea, come to fruition. So it's been really cool to be working with them, and especially just being in Denver.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really easy to get in touch with them. A lot of these companies nowadays are kind of in various locations Croatia, India, what have you. And so it's kind of not that personal kind of hey, just call them up, you want to meet for coffee, and we can kind of go over some things. Piyush prefers tea because he is from India.
Right.
But either way, it's been really nice to work with.
Okay, cool. Very cool. All right, so the second question that I have for you, Jordan, is do you have a favorite book or book that you like to gift often?
Yeah, I think Eager Dreams is probably one of my favorites, just because it goes through a lot of really cool stories that the author writes about. I'm blanking on his name.
Oh, that's okay.
One of my favorite books. But Eager Dreams is definitely one of them. He also wrote Into Thin Air. And then there's another Josh Simpson book that, Touching the Void, that I absolutely love, that really goes through some of some extreme difficulties on a climbing expedition that they had. And it just, I don't know, kind of shows you the power of will, essentially. And it's just a really cool book. I actually got the pleasure to meet him up in Alaska one time at a St. Patrick's Day party, which was pretty cool.
There you go, man.
got
to
do some Irish car bombs with him, and it was interesting the kind of crowd that there was there. But it was a lot of fun meeting him and just like reading the book and then seeing the person. It's kind of like meeting Jack Nicholson.
There you go, man.
It was very cool. Very cool. So I would say those are my favorite books just because they're a lot about just kind of like the adventure thing and what have you. So.
All right, beautiful. All right, so the third question that I have for you is, and if there's more than one, please feel free to share. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
Get dreams. Is one that me and a lot of my friends grew up saying to each other. It's kind of like an encouragement thing, but growing up in rural Illinois, not a lot going on there. So a way to kind of avoid getting too distracted or to really just kind of like, try to push ourselves, like get dreams was the I guess mantra, if you will, that we would tell each other a lot. And that kind of thing really allowed me to push myself, even at an early age, to kind of achieve some things that were maybe a little bit out there, not the norm type of stuff. And so that quote has really stuck with me throughout my life.
Love it. All right, so the final question, Jordan, as a part of the warm-up, do you have a favorite or most listened to podcast?
I know it's really cliche, but the TED Talks.
TED Talks?
I really enjoy TED Talks just because they are very inspirational. We have actually applied to try to get on a TED Talk, but we're a little early in our career, I guess, as Cairn Guides. They didn't quite accept us, but that's, there's been folks that have applied like 5-6 times, and on the 6th time they got it, so it's like, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. But I really enjoy the TED Talks just because they, I don't know, they just have a way of really just crafting a story in a really interesting way. They cover all kinds of different topics, so it's not necessarily you're getting the same thing over and over. It just hits a wide variety of things, and having a background in research to it really kind of hits on that.
Cool. Now we're actually in Boulder, Colorado, doing this podcast right now, and if I remember correctly, or correct me if I'm wrong, but they have TED Talks at Colorado. Boulder, right?
Yeah.
At the university, I think, every year? Or? Okay, cool.
I think it varies from location to location, but I think they do one about every summer.
Okay.
That you can like apply for and everything like that. And we applied, I think it was last June, when we applied for that one. We've been kind of too busy with things to kind of buckle down and put in another application for this year. But like I said, they have them here in Boulder. I know there's some in Denver. And I'm sure there's a couple other locations.
That's so cool. And if that's something, again, kind of like that's a dream that you have, man, it'll happen for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. I think for us, they were looking for a little bit more of a polished product. When we first applied, I mean, we'd been around maybe 2 months.
Okay, yeah.
we were really swinging for the fence there.
Right.
It was a little bit idealistic to think that would really follow through, but we thought, hey, maybe they'll go for it. What's the worst thing that can happen? They say no?
For sure, man. For sure. All right, so that kind of wraps up the warm-up, Jordan. I want to kind of get into your backstory now. So just kind of like, you already mentioned you grew up in rural Illinois, but just kind of like a little bit more about maybe where you grew up, kind of your hometown, kind of like, were you involved in sports, extracurricular activities? Was kind of the outdoors a part of your life, and just things like that? And we'll just kind of work our way up to kind of like high school, then college, and then we'll begin to kind of discuss where you're at today and how you got to Boulder. So just kind of start sharing, if you don't mind, that upbringing and what that kind of looked like.
Yeah, I think I can attribute it starting at, interestingly, with bears. I always, as a kid, was really interested in animals in general, but like bears of all kinds, black bears, polar bears, you name it, were always something that I was interested in, especially like endangered species as well.
Right.
And so stuff like that is initially what got me interested in kind of like the outdoors. Because I would see these like people go on these awesome like expeditions, and they would see like whales, or they would go up to like the North Pole and go on these epic like things, and I was like, that is so cool. Like, how do you do that? And being in Illinois, there's not a whole lot going on there.
Right,
so
right. I'm from Iowa, so I know.
Yeah, so it's really easy to kind of become a little bit obsessed with things if they really catch your eye, especially at like a young age.
For
sure. I was like 5-6 years old. And so there was a lot of things that through like animals that introduced me to the outdoors and stuff. And my family wasn't necessarily like huge into like the camping and stuff like that. Like in Illinois, like there's some cool stuff out there. Don't get me wrong. Southern Illinois is beautiful. If you ever get a chance to go down there, Southern Illinois is the place to be if you're in Illinois for any reason. My dad was like really into like the hunting thing, which really wasn't my jive, because I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh, let's like save the animals, and he's more so like, let's hunt turkeys and stuff like that. I'm like, it's kind of for the birds.
Right.
I'm just like, not really. So I wasn't really ever into that, but kind of that just like early on infatuation with like different kinds of animals and species and stuff like that is kind of what started things. And then throughout that, I mean, I wasn't like one of those people that like necessarily like was always in the forest and doing things like that. It really wasn't until I was about a teenager that I really kind of flipped a switch with things. Me and a lot of my buddies, like as we got older, as many teenagers do, like there's all sorts of different things that start to happen in life. You know what I mean? Like you start to meet girls, drugs, different stuff like that. And so though we did our fair share of participating in that kind of stuff, it was really kind of going out into the wilderness and just like kind of having that sense of like being alone, that really kind of started to mold a larger picture for things, because we would occasionally go on trips and stuff like that when we were kids, like like go to the Ozarks in Missouri, and that's like a bunch of like water sports, which by the way, terrified of water. Like,
really? Okay.
But family thought that was the thing to do. So
yeah.
Here we go. But no, it wasn't until I was about, I think like maybe 15 or 16 that I really started getting more into the outdoors, because a good friend of mine, Dougal, he kind of introduced me to like rock climbing. And again, I'm terrified of heights, so it's like this whole outdoorsy thing is kind of a miracle that it all came together.
Yeah.
But introduced me to rock climbing, which the first time I went, I was like, this is super cool, because I mean, there's such a camaraderie around it, like in terms of like people and talking about like the climbs I did and stuff. Well, here I am, like absolutely, I mean, just like terrified of heights. Like I could get up maybe 10 feet, and I'm like, forget this, I need to get down. But the camaraderie of everything and just kind of like the social aspect really drew me into like, I need to, kind of get more in, I need to get better at this somehow. And so I started doing a sport called bouldering, where you're not climbing up nearly as high. It's kind of counterintuitive, because then you don't have ropes, you don't have that safety factor in there. And so you would think like, why would you go to like a more dangerous sport to try to get over something like rock climbing, which is theoretically safer? But through like bouldering and my good friend Dougal, my older brother John, started to develop kind of like these different friendships and these relationships that really kind of allowed me to get kind of where I am today.
Yeah.
Because there was that whole, like I said, that get dreams thing. Like it was all about just kind of like pushing yourself and really trying to think of maybe the most, completely out there thing possible, and saying like, I think I can achieve this. And then if you don't, like, think about where you grew from that moment.
Absolutely.
So just different experiences like that is what kind of early on got me into the outdoors. I wasn't like one of those people that was, when I wasn't like at school or whatever, I was always outside. Like it wasn't necessarily like that from the get-go. It took me a little bit to really get interested in the outdoors, but once I discovered kind of like the climbing aspect of it, and then went on like a trip to the mountains out here in Colorado when I was 16, that was like really when I started to get a lot more interested in it.
Beautiful. Now, were you like in middle school, high school and stuff? Were you involved in sports or anything like that, or not?
Yeah, I did quite a few sports. I honestly, played just about everything that they would let you. Did like baseball, basketball, football, everything like that. A smaller town in Illinois though too. Like it kind of takes a little bit. Like they don't let us like do like tackle football or anything like that until about 7th grade.
Did you grow up playing flag football then? Or? That's what we did too.
Yeah, we did the flag football thing. In sports like that, it was always kind of like it felt like you were supposed to do it. Like it was never like I absolutely love this.
Right.
Like I'd say football, like towards the end of my high school career, I started to get like into it. It was kind of a bummer when it ended, but that's when I also started to realize that, it kind of makes more sense to really pursue something that you're like passionate about, as well as something that you feel like you can like make a difference in. So Did a lot of sports growing up, kind of you name it. I mean, sand volleyball, basketball. I try to play soccer. They put me on defense because I can't score in my life. But still, just anytime I could get any kind of fitness in, be around people, I was always just kind of about it.
Yeah. So you had a sounds like overall a very active upbringing then, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I say we were always, I mean, doing something. Like if there was a dull moment, it might be on a Sunday, and that's because mom was preparing this like big dinner type of thing, which you don't want to miss on. So so it's like, all right, we can kick it for today. But yeah, we were always kind of doing things. I mean, it kept us busy. My mom having 3 kids, like that's a lot of energy in the room,
for sure,
and a lot of personality, and so sports was always a way that was easy to kind of like meet people. It was a lot of what the other kids were doing too. So you don't want to be that weird,
right.
But a lot of those early on sports and stuff like that definitely set me up to do some pretty athletic stuff too.
Cool. Now I want to go back to this "Get Dreams" kind of quote or mantra, because just from my experience, Jordan, a lot of times younger kids, they're just kind of like, in the present moment, just kind of doing whatever they're supposed to be doing, whatever mom and dad's telling them. And that kind of like, thought process of, these big dreams, these big goals, all of that type of stuff isn't really always there. So, I mean, I know you kind of said this "Get Dreams" thing kind of was, kind of came up through yourself and some of your buddies, but was there kind of like, I mean, did one of your friends kind of bring this kind of to the table and you guys are like, yeah, that's kind of cool? Or like, how did that kind of formulate? Because again, younger kids really aren't focused on that type of stuff a lot of times. Now kids, especially sports and stuff, we're like, oh, I want to be a pro football player, kind of stuff like that. But, where did this "Get Dreams" really kind of come to be? And then, how did it kind of stick?
Yeah, it was primarily it started, just one day, somebody kind of said that, kind of Dougal, I think, was the one that said that, and like this was in this time period, that's when we really started. I mean, we were making rafts, we were making tree houses, we were doing all kinds of stuff, and so we started to realize, we can do some pretty cool stuff.
Absolutely.
And being in like rural Illinois, there's kind of some specific options that you can kind of, I guess, accept. And we were not really on board with like thinking like this is the way life's supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like you kind of go to college, you get married, you get a house and everything like that. It was always kind of like we somehow came together and really just convinced ourselves that like we can accomplish some really cool things. It's not that we're like smarter or somehow have some like things that are going to allow us to create great things necessarily, but we just kind of had this drive that was like like if you put in the work and you really hunker down and like do the things that you want to do, you can make them happen. And some of that started with that like climbing stuff, like when I was able to get up 20 feet versus 10 feet, that was like the world to me, because I realized I was like, you're not just stuck. You're not just like, this is the only thing you're ever going to accomplish, or this is as high as you're going to go. That was the first time that I had an ability to really like push myself, but have like the support of like Dougal, his dad, exceptional climbers that really allowed me to kind of experiment a little bit in terms of whether it had to do with like safety climbing, different stuff like that. And I did realize that the climbing stuff was going to take a very long time period. Like I don't want you to think that I'm some type of like expert. Like climbing to me is very much at this point kind of a hobby at this point. The hiking and stuff is kind of my real wheelhouse. No, I mean, it just really, after seeing that you can really push yourself, and if you put in the work and you do the research or whatever it is, like you can do some really cool stuff. There was a English teacher that I had, Mr. Jordan, that also was all about like, he wasn't saying you got to do it this way or that way. It was more so like, how do you want to do it? And he would kind of give us some support and different stuff like that. But just different people like that, they allow you to kind of, experiment a little bit, kind of push the envelope to kind of, it's like, what is safe, what's not so safe. So having different experiences like that through people that allow you to like really grow, ultimately is what it was, really just allowed us to go that much higher. Once you realize you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad, what's kind of like the next thing that I could maybe do? And That's what kind of got me into like college and stuff like that, where I started pushing myself. I was like, what's the ultimate thing that I could do, like given in my, my education experience and stuff like that. And that for me was like neuroscience. I was like, a scientist, that is somebody who comes with like a lot of expertise. There's someone who, can really benefit the world. And so like the neuroscience stuff really made me like, that's what I need to do. Initially, but that did not necessarily all pan out.
Right.
But just different stuff like that. I know that's kind of like all over the place. But
no, that's perfect.
There's been a couple different experiences that I've had that have really just, I don't know, made me think that it's like, what's the worst case scenario? You know what I mean? Like you go try to do the absolute best thing you can, and you fail. You're still gonna grow from that.
Absolutely.
That's not a failure.
No, I just it's just really amazing how at a very young age this quote or this mantra, "Get dreams," kind of got into your mind, and then it kind of got conditioned in your mind, and it's powerful, man, because what we think is who and what we become. And so I'm excited to kind of get into the rest of your story here, but that just really fascinates me. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit more about Get Dreams. So you've talked about college and everything, just kind of a little bit in passing as you're unfolding your backstory. So where did you go to college? And then let's just kind of talk about, it sounds like maybe there was an initial focus in studies, then there was maybe a change. So just talk about kind of that college experience. Where'd you go? What did you start off with? What did you graduate with? And we'll just keep moving down that road.
Okay. Yeah, no, I went to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, and that's why I kind of brag about the Southern Illinois component of it, because I mean it's an incredible place. I love Southern, but started actually off at cinematography. So I thought I was going to edit movies essentially, and I was gonna go somehow make that these really powerful experiences that when people saw, they would be like inspired.
Right.
But after literally a semester of that, I was like, I don't have the patience for this.
Yeah.
So I mean, I had to go to like a career counselor just because I was like sitting here, I was like, I'm not going to be in college forever. I need to somehow figure out what it is I am going to do, because at that point I was really focused on music in the brain, actually.
Okay.
And so like the brain aspect of it, and kind of talking to a career counselor about, they kind of informed me that it's like, well, it kind of sounds like psychology is what you should research. And I was like, all right, like I'll study all like the more biology psych type of stuff. So like neuroimaging, neuroscience, learning about the different ways that people's brains are impacted based on whether it's like injuries or memory or all kinds of different things. And so I started to learn a little bit more about neuroscience, and from learning those things I connected it. It's like, oh, well, if I understand how people's brains work, and then I somehow at a later date I'll be like, that's when the music stuff comes together.
Okay.
So I kind of looked at it as like, this is like a long-term type of thing. It's not just I'm going to wake up one day and I'm going to know everything, and I'm going to be this like PhD, doing all this epic research and accomplishing all these things. I kind of accepted that it's like this is a process. And after doing that for a while, I got to do some really cool research, whether it was through like internships. Like I was in Memphis for a little bit, where I got to meet some considered at-risk type of folks that are kind of getting back into the community. They've been adopted. They have some kind of like, the kids down there have gone through some extremely just, I can't even imagine, living like that. I was just there temporarily to help them improve, whether it was through routines, developing coping mechanisms, all kinds of different stuff, because they had, anxiety, depression, some of them had bipolar disorder, all kinds of different things, and a lot of it had to do with just kind of like how they grew up.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, this is how things started, and things have eventually developed into that way. And so being in Memphis, I learned a lot about that. And then I did some fellowships in like Atlanta, where I did some more of like the neuroimaging stuff with like crayfish, which is hilarious, because you think about people that do these different research on things like birds and animals and people and different stuff like that. But crayfish have these like giant neurons. Or is it neurons? Like I said, my brain's a little out of date. But,
that's okay.
They have these giant, I believe it's neurons, that when you introduce, whether it has to do with like addiction, or some folks did some EEG, so you can really see how things work. But crayfish was an interesting way to learn about those. And after those kind of experiences, I was put in a position to kind of move up in the world, as they say, because after I graduated in 2013, I got an opportunity to do research at the University of Wisconsin.
Okay.
And that was on the prevention of Alzheimer's disease, which has really crafted a lot of like where I'm at today. But after I graduated, I did a job there for about a year where we focused on lifestyle factors.
Okay.
And what I found really interesting about that whole thing was that they focused on the prevention of Alzheimer's through lifestyle factors. And so that's like how they eat, how they exercise, cognitive stimulation, socializing, stuff like that. Whereas everything I had heard prior to them was always about how do we treat it. You know what I mean? Like we're in that kind of like stage 4 area or what have you, and it's like, how are we going to treat this thing? Whereas these people were like, we don't have the we don't have the ability to, you know, all of a sudden treat these people and everybody's going to be great. It's like that's, you know, we're going to look at kind of a step ahead of things, and people that were considered middle-aged, so that's anywhere from like 55 to 65 age folks, they really focused on how can we prevent these types of things. And lifestyle factors are how they found one of those things. So that whole experience really made a big impact on kind of like where I'm at today.
For sure. Okay, so you graduated from Southern Illinois University. That's correct, right? Your undergraduate. And what was your like specific degree in then?
Psychology.
Psychology. Okay, and then kind of this experience at the University of Wisconsin in regards to Alzheimer, and you know, maybe some alternative ways to kind of maybe treat it, and you know, the exercise and nutrition and stuff like that. That was kind of really kind of an awakening experience for you as somebody that had that degree in psychology, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what did that? So you have this experience at the University of Wisconsin. If I remember right, you said you were there for about a year or so.
Yep.
Okay. So what kind of happened after you kind of got done with the University of Wisconsin? What happened from there? And then just kind of like continue to explain kind of the impact of, you know, maybe these alternative ways of treating Alzheimer's and working with people kind of with some of those cognitive issues.
Yeah. So while I was there for a year, I learned a lot, but I got to a point where I was like, I didn't feel like I was working directly with people.
Okay.
You know, like we would work with people, we would do different like studies and have participants do these different things with like exercise or cognitive stimulation and stuff like that, which was awesome. Like, I mean, cutting edge stuff. But I eventually got to a point where I think I was just worn out in terms, because it wasn't quite satisfying enough,
right?
To where I wanted to actually work more directly with people, learn more about like, you know, what are all these like mental illnesses and why do people, you know, respond these ways and what have you. And so after that, I kind of just I had enough to where I could essentially move kind of wherever I wanted to in the United States. And so Colorado was always where I'd wanted to be. Just because of like the mountains. I've been skiing out like there, Utah, Alaska, a lot of different really cool places. And so I was like, I mean, if there's ever an opportunity to actually be out here, this is the time. And so I, you know, packed up everything I could in my car, lived out of my car for about a month, just kind of sifting around in Colorado, and wound up in, of all places, Boulder, Colorado. And while I was there, I got an interview at a local psychiatric hospital.
Cool.
That I've been working at for about the past, I think it's 4.5, probably coming close to 5 years now.
Okay.
Where I started as what's called, it's like a mental health worker. You know, we work very directly with the patients there. We run psychoeducational groups. Verbal de-escalation is a huge thing. You know, you have people that are, you know, basically in crisis of some kind. And so really working directly with folks like that was really a awesome fitting for where I was at in my life, because I mean, you can learn a lot just in a couple of months.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, it's very much a fast-paced environment where things can change and, you know, the drop of a hat, where you have to really, you know, accommodate a lot of different, you know, personalities, some mental illnesses, all kinds of different things. And so I learned a ton from not only like the patients, but the people that I was working with. Had some awesome employees that I got to learn a lot with, because that was the first time I was ever in like what's considered kind of like a human services type of environment. And so for me, it was a completely new thing.
Yeah.
And so I got to learn a lot really quickly, and after about, I think it was about a year and a half, a little less than, I got an opportunity to be promoted again, moving up in the world. And I got to be a manager there, and so I supervised, it was kind of over 60 employees, close to 100 patients, did some different stuff, and like in terms of like training, whether it was like becoming a CPI instructor, so teaching people how to really de-escalate situations, and just really things escalated really quickly. And I got to do that for about 2.5 years, where I learned just kind of like a lot of the ins and outs of the administrative stuff, working directly with patients, working directly with staff. I really moved up really quickly through that, and got to learn just a ton of different things that I just couldn't even imagine learning from. But once I got to work more directly with people, I kind of found like this is very much like where I kind of like belong with things, just because you see, I mean, no day is the same. You know what I mean? Whereas when it's like that cognitive stimulation in terms of like, okay, what's going on today is now a day where I can kind of catch up on these projects and what have you. And got to do this really cool thing where we developed this thing called the Lavender team, which is like a verbal de-escalation team. Instead of, you know, what would happen in the past is when people like were really emotionally escalated, you would have you know, anywhere from like 10 to 30 people showing up and kind of like making sure that things are safe and what have you. And it was really intense. You know, people could get hurt and things could get very emotionally very quick. And so we developed this thing called the Lavender team that was really successful because rather than having all these people show up, when people started showing these whether it was aggressive, angry, really depressed, maybe self-harming even a little bit. We would kind of, rather than just going 0 to 100, we would kind of go in, really try to understand the people, like what's going on, and really trying to work with them to help them kind of think more logically. Because it's kind of like when you get really upset, like if you think of a time when you got really angry, it's kind of like you drop IQ points a little bit because you start losing so logically. And so having a couple people, like I said, it's like anywhere from like 1 to 4 people show up, and really trying to work with them was something that turned out to be extremely successful. It was a really cool, I guess, just network of people that, you know, used their own expertise, their own knowledge to really come in and de-escalate situations rather than having to maybe go hands-on, use emergency medications, anything like that, and really try to work with people so it's like more like it's a learning opportunity, it's not a punishment. And I mean, we had like an 85% success rate, which when it comes to, you know, treatment like that, like, I mean, that's really rare. Typically, you know, you have medications that they do what they're supposed to do, but as far as like de-escalation and stuff like that, it's more like maybe like 50-50, like it's kind of up in the air, like is this person going to relax? Like it depends on what kind of staff you have, like all kinds of different stuff. But we were extremely successful with that verbal de-escalation team, the Lavender team. And so it was really cool to be a part of that and really making it what felt like an advancement in terms of how we were, you know, interacting and treating the people that were patients there.
Now, in regards to your experience at the University of Wisconsin and learning some of these alternative ways to maybe treat some cognitive issues and things of that nature, did any of that experience come into play then when you kind of started working with some of these patients with some of these different cognitive issues or health issues and maybe, you know, the short tempers and different things like that? Did some of that Wisconsin experience then kind of come into play when you got the job at Boulder?
Oh yeah, 100%. A lot of that, all I knew from the past was like research, you know what I mean? And so like when I saw people like escalating in certain situations and I wasn't necessarily like prepared to like really know how to help de-escalate people or help people work through, you know, various emotions, I just kind of went back to research and really try to understand, like, why is it when someone who is maybe like manic, why are they just like running all over the road, and why are they like almost uncontrollable? You're like, that's not how somebody normally works. But, you know, you learn from people. It's kind of a combination between the research but also just learning from experience, to where you try different things where, I mean, sometimes it's something as simple as like, hey, let's take 5 minutes to go to the gym. And I mean, I remember a kid that was, I mean, he had a temper that could just, I mean, he could skyrocket. But what I found was that, hey, we're just going to go out in the gym and we're going to just shoot around for like 10, 15 minutes. chills out back to where they were at, and it was all good, you know.
Right, right.
And so some of it was very much kind of like a trial and error thing early on, but you start to learn little techniques that work in terms of whether like really building that relationship, because you know some of the things that really are the differences is respect and really just having, you know, allowing someone to voice whatever it is that's going on with them, you know, whether it's something like a particular staff member that's upsetting them, or, you know, their stuff completely outside of the hospital that they have a hard time maybe putting together what's really upsetting them and what's really driving some of these emotions, when it's just ultimately they need a platform to really vent or really help processing through some of the different emotions or things that go on. So it's one of those really cool jobs where, you know, you're going to know some of the things, but a lot of the times it's like you got to just on the fly.
You got to just go with the flow. Man.
Yep, exactly.
And and some of this information that you're sharing it's powerful stuff, and I really encourage you listeners out there just to really kind of take what Jordan's sharing right now and internalize it and think about it, because like I'm a school teacher, so when you talk about working with different kids and stuff, and I lived in inner city Detroit and worked as a camp counselor at the YMCA and done a lot of different work with youth on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. So I've been around youth specifically, kind of more so than adults, but then I also have worked in a halfway house. So I've been in a lot of situations where, you know, there's a lot of different personalities, but specifically talking about and referring to being a teacher, you have to learn really to go with the flow, and you personally have to be kind of grounded and kind of have your foundation, and you really have to understand different kids, different personalities, and just because all of us are different, and especially these, you know, kids and adults that have, you know, maybe some tough upbringings. They don't know how to cope with certain things. They don't know how to deal with their feelings and emotions. All this, like, you know, they're very explosive, and they have all these different, just, you know, immature ways to handle themselves in situations. And as a teacher, as a coach, as, you know, somebody that's interacting with these type of people, it's just like finding out. And sometimes it's hard, especially in the 20, 25 kids, it's kind of hard, but that's what we're getting kind of paid for. You have to just really find out, like, okay, what triggers this kid or what triggers this adult, and avoid that. What helps this child or this adult kind of like, you know, chill out and things like that. So just some of the things that you're sharing, Jordan, is stuff that I'm going to take with me and you know, apply to being a teacher, because it boils down to people skills, right? Yeah.
I was hiking with a social studies teacher. It was a couple days ago, and this guy went from a teacher, which I give kudos to you guys, because that's a whole nother so kudos to you, but a lot of it's very similar, and he actually became a lawyer because he's basically trying to connect and utilize some of his experience as a teacher, because I mean, there's just not as much resources typically in those type. I mean, they were telling me there was something crazy, like 4 counselors for like 1,600 kids, which is insane. It's like, how do you expect someone that is going through, whether it be like hormones, trouble at home, trouble with friends, bullying, there's all kinds of things that they have to deal with these days, and it's no different than it used to be. You know, it's just a little bit more different. You know what I mean? You have like social media and different stuff like that can, you know, equate into different experiences, but ultimately being able to really connect with kids, despite whether you're like fresh out of college or you've been, you know, being a teacher for years, you really have to adapt with the kids these days, just because they have so much going on. There's a lot of pressure, and, you know, sometimes they just literally don't know how to process through the emotions. Like, they may be extremely angry, or they may be like extremely depressed. They don't necessarily know why. Like, there's no like, oh, you know, like my grandma, you know, passed away, and so I've been passed away, and my mom's divorced. You know, it's not always this like 1 + 2 = you know, it's not that simple. And so I found that, you know, like teachers or, you know, mentors even, that really take the time to kind of like understand and actually connect with them. You know, I mean, or just being able to respect them. You know, you may not be able to necessarily fix what's going on in that moment, but I mean, still giving them an opportunity to kind of voice what's truly going on for them, and you can be real with them, rather than like, oh, well, we're going to do steps 1 through 3 and we're going to be happy people. That's not reality. You know, I mean, like, just being real with kids and like providing them a platform to where they can at least try to communicate. They might even fail, but who cares? You know, like that person that they can really like trust and develop that relationship with, especially at such a young age, is huge. And so, I mean, we at the hospital we have an adolescent unit that deals with everything under the sun, whether it's like adolescent anxiety. We have some kiddos even at such young ages they experience psychotic behaviors. It's all over the map, and especially Colorado has such a shortage. In terms of treatments for things like that. I mean, it's tough, you know, being in the suicide belt that we're in. And I don't want to, you know, go on too much of a rant about that, but I mean, I just give kudos to teachers that are like really able to connect with these students and allow them to succeed regardless of whether they've gone through the absolute ringer. There's still kiddos out there that like just rise above and they do these incredible things.
Man.
And when you see that light bulb turn on, that was my favorite thing about Memphis. I about said Memphis. My favorite thing about is that light bulb that goes on. That whether it's that maybe they start rock climbing or they start reading or art or whatever it is, but seeing that light turn on. 99% of the time, like that is like you've got success right there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like obviously nobody's perfect, but seeing that like light bulb turn, I mean that's huge.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like you can't. There's nothing in the world that's going to replace that.
For sure. And even you just kind of like sharing your story. You talked about, I think it was an English teacher that kind of was, you know, pivotal in kind of like, you know, feeding into get dreams, and you don't have to, you know, kind of do what has always been done. And so it's like, you know, we can all kind of look back on our younger years, and there was at least one adult, whether they were a teacher or not, there's at least one adult, parent or not, it doesn't really matter, but there's at least one adult that you know played a very pivotal role in kind of like who we are today. You know what I mean? So as adults, it's important for us to remember, like when we're interacting with kids, like, hey, like, you know, just be cognizant of like what you're saying, how you're interacting with them, because we really don't know most of the time kind of like what they're seeing in regards to their home environment and the adults that are in their life most of the time. So just really saying, hey, you know what? I need to be present. I need to be here right now for this child, these children, because they're so impressionable and they're developing, you know. So now you've talked about, and I want to touch on this because this is a skill I believe is very important in life, and specifically in regards to interacting with people, which all of us have to on some level every day. But the like verbal de-escalation, just maybe for somebody out there that doesn't really know what de-escalation means, kind of just break that down quickly, simply, and then just work through, like, let's say a situation where you've had, like in your hospital or something, where you have to actually put verbal de-escalation into practice and kind of what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, each scenario is obviously different, and we've seen, you know, in my experience, all kinds of different things, and I just love the people that I get to work with, because everybody brings something different to the table. There's been plenty of times where it's like I go try to de-escalate somebody despite my experience, but you can have that brand new person for whatever reason. They just connect, whether it's like they look like them, they remind them of a relative, for some reason they just touch base. But a lot of what it is just kind of like some fairly simple things to at least start a conversation, but it kind of starts with being able to allow someone to actually communicate. And that starts with not you talking, but actually allowing them themselves to provide some conversation about what's going on. You know, one of the benefits of me being kind of like not necessarily working with people 24/7, being an outsider kind of looking in, you can really step in and be like, you know, you can just start like, I know that you have like a lot of things going on. Can you just like start to just walk me through what's led up to this? Because oftentimes it's not necessarily like right in that environment or right in that moment, like what's led to this, but it's like there could be things that happened hours, days ago that eventually they reach their point where like enough is enough, you know what I mean? And it's kind of what, you know, snapped the camel's back to where they just kind of like blow up emotionally. But a lot of it's just simply listening, you know, being attentive and like being focused on what they're saying. You don't have to fix things. That's the other thing, is people run into a situation where they're like, I have to fix this. I must, you know, like correct this, or I can change this. Literally allowing someone a platform where they can just communicate some of the things that are bothering them. You don't necessarily need to, okay, we're going to like make this plan and we're going to change this. And put together this whole plot or plan, but it's just more so having a opportunity to actually talk about these things. And that's honestly one of the things that I really enjoy about podcasts, as well as some of the stuff that I do through my company, is you allow somebody an opportunity to at least voice some things that ordinarily they could be shut down about, or just not really clear on how to communicate some of the things that go through their minds. And so providing a safe platform, listening, and then paraphrasing too is one thing. So after somebody's maybe discussed something, it's like, okay, so as far as I can tell, like, you're really upset about, maybe how you're being treated by some of the staff here. Maybe some of your needs aren't being met. I mean, it could be as simple as like, I'm hungry. Like if somebody just came into our hospital fresh out of a crisis, I always think of this situation that, I mean, things blew up real quick. And all we learned after a while, because I showed up a little bit later, and it's kind of like, like right now in this moment, like what can we do to help some of what's going on right now? They're like, I haven't eaten for 3 days.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Type of stuff. And it's like, because what they blew up about was the fact that they were promised dessert, but they didn't get dessert. And so that was kind of like what snapped a little bit. Because like a lot of these people, it's not like they say they attempted to harm themselves, cops got called, now they're in like a hospital, and now it's all gravy from there. It's like, we're bettering you. It's like they at times have spent days just sitting in a hospital waiting for placement to receive more appropriate treatment. And so I always think of that time when we had a patient who just that was it.
Yeah.
All they needed was that one thing. They needed dessert. We brought them dessert, and I mean the rest of their stay there was smooth sailing.
Wow.
They just needed that little thing. That, I mean, we talked with them for a little bit too to kind of figure out what can we do to really start things at a more positive note. You know what I mean? Because we're not here to like punish people or anything like that. And so it takes time, and just honestly, it's a little bit of just experimenting, because sometimes what happens or what works for one person doesn't work for the other person. And so we're not always right. Like they could be like really hungry, but like there's people who are experiencing some more significant symptoms and stuff like that, to where it's like they can't necessarily process what we're trying to do to like assist them, but as long as we're there to be like supportive despite what they're experiencing and going through, we still at least are moving forward. It's not like we're completely forgetting them, or they're just like, oh, this is a lost cause. It's like, everybody has needs, and some are bigger or smaller than others. So I always think of that dessert, and just there was a time where this individual did have to come back to our hospital for a little bit. It was much shorter type of scenario, but I just always joke now about that. Like, hey, you need dessert? And she's like, well, of course, Jordan. Like, I'm not gonna not have dessert. Right.
And that's good, man.
But it's just really simple things sometimes that really make a difference. And so.
But it really seems like to me, kind of just like what you're sharing with this, kind of the verbal de-escalation. It really just starts with having a conversation, like. If it's another adult, you just have an adult to adult conversation, but really focusing on listening to them and kind of finding out, what has maybe led them to be acting or, speaking the way that they are in that moment. Is that correct? Just really having a conversation and just asking those questions, but really being a good listener, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And then there's other times too, it's where you actually have to be a little bit firmer. There's some people that they've never heard no before, and so when you tell them no, that's a learning opportunity. It's not as smooth sailing as some of the other times, but like, being able to talk or communicate certain things, but also being willing to kind of be firm about something. It's like, this isn't going to be like how things have gone. If you've just been given everything you've ever asked for, that's probably part of the reason that you're at where you're at now. And so it's a fine line. But I would say the majority of people, like I said, they have some type of need that isn't being met. So it's kind of our responsibility to kind of like listen, be supportive, and really trying to figure out what's going to allow them to grow personally. Because, if they came to the hospital, or even through our company or whatever, like if they just do the same thing that they've been doing, that's not growing.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
For
like
sure.
You're just doing the same thing you're doing. And though you may not necessarily be as emotionally upset, but if say there's something that's not quite, satisfying you, or your needs aren't met one day, it's not like, like I didn't get what I want, so I'm just going to amplify things like that. That doesn't help you grow.
Right.
You know?
Perfect. Okay, so Jordan, to kind of finish things out, I really want to spend the rest of our conversation on Cairn Guides and just kind of like, what is it and how did you kind of come up with that, and just kind of just brag on what that is and what you guys provide, and we're just gonna hang out here and kind of finish things out with that. Okay.
Sounds good.
Cool.
This all kind of started because, like I said, at the time I was still working at the hospital.
Okay.
And so I just kind of started on the side. There's these like Airbnb things, they call them experiences, where essentially on the side I can like hike with people. And I'm going to be going outside anyway, so why not make a little extra cash?
For sure. Yeah.
What have you. But after just doing it for a little bit, I realized I was like, wow, there's like a really cool opportunity for this. Excuse me. There's a really cool opportunity for this because not only do you get to kind of expand on the different things that you can provide people, but there's a lot of potential for not only like the mental health component, but conservation, supporting local businesses. And so after doing it for a little bit, I realized I was like, wow, this could be something like really cool. So we started the company with the idea that essentially like there's people with all kinds of different skills and things like that. I'm, like I said, my expertise is kind of more in like the hiking and stuff like that, but that we also have like outdoor yoga folks. We have trail running, like Josh, who you've met before.
Absolutely.
All kinds of different outdoor recreation. We saw it as an opportunity to kind of take care of the environment as one thing, because I think of a time when I was cruising through the Independence Pass over near Aspen, and the first thing you see when you get there is like, stay on the trail, because the being at those types of sort of like elevation, things are very sensitive in terms of like the environment out there and everything. And so being there and seeing people literally not even caring about like the first sign you see is stay on the trail.
Right.
See like 15 people out there, and like those are really sensitive environments that take decades to grow that type of stuff, and people end it in a matter of seconds without even realizing it. So there was that component of it to where we kind of utilized it as a way as kind of like doing our part to, take care of the environment and everything like that. But also being there to really introduce people to these types of activities, whether it be hiking, trail running, yoga, what have you. It's an opportunity to really get people hiked. A really good opportunity to get people hooked on those different types of things, because oftentimes it's like the first time people have ever hiked, first time they've been to Colorado. We also get those folks that are like, I've hiked before, but I'm going to be in the area for a little bit, so I'm really trying to get kind of the best experience, period. So we kind of combine an aspect of it that's, like teaching people about like things like leaving no trace, what kind of gear to plan. I'll never forget this person. This was very early on in the career, to where it's like they weren't quite sure what to wear, and I told them I was very general, like water, backpack, and some snacks. They brought like a 16-ounce bottle of water, a Cliff Bar, and it's like, we're going to need a lot more than that. And so a little bit of a learning curve about that kind of thing, but really got to kind of teach people about some things to miss that you just wouldn't think of, like what kind of shoes do I wear? What do we do when certain clouds come into the sky? Like it's all about safety, setting people up to kind of do this stuff in the future, because we're not necessarily a company that wants people to come back again and again and again. We're really trying to kind of get that first opportunity to where we, show people places in the area so that they can continue to do this stuff themselves.
Cool.
A lot of it is building that sense of confidence, because for people, whether they have hiked before or none at all, mountains out here can be really intimidating.
Absolutely.
And so being there to provide them, prevent them from getting lost, knowing what kind of gear to bring, all that stuff. If we take away having to worry about that stuff, that brings into all the awesome benefits that there are to, just being outdoors. Literally, gardening has been around for years for people. It's a way for them to kind of like cope with, whether it's stress management or, it's just something that they like to do as like a hobby. We're kind of taking a lot of the just skills that people have to try to really make a memorable experience for them in the outdoors. Because, the cool thing that I was talking to you about earlier was the fact that it's not like it's just works for people that have like Alzheimer's disease or ADHD or folks with PTSD or what have you. I mean, being outdoors helps support any type of mental health.
Absolutely.
And stuff like that. And so by combining our kind of my background in mental health, knowledge with the outdoors and the area that we live in, and then utilizing all the different kind of folks that we have in the area is kind of what brought this together. It also makes it a lot more fun because currently what's out there is a lot of different kind of what I call canned experiences. So it's basically doing the same thing again and again and again and again and again. So what we do that's a lot different than what's out there is we have people tell us about what they're looking to kind of experience. For one, like, you know, some people want to do like a sunrise thing. Some people want to do some outdoor yoga while I'm out here on vacation. Some people are like, I just, you know, broke up with or I just got divorced or something like that. I need to accomplish something. So helping facilitate them, you know, hiking a mountain and getting up there like that helps them kind of start turning some gears and stuff like that. And so by creating experiences and adventures for them that are really crafted towards, one, what they're interested in seeing and experiencing, but also their abilities. You know, it's not like, hey, just because I'm like, you know, 75 years old or this is the first time I've ever been hiking, I can just go as high as I want or what have you. That's not reality.
Right.
But because of our knowledge and experience, we can show people a variety of things that come pretty close or are just like spot on in terms of what they're wanting to experience. So that's kind of the cool part about the Cairn Guides thing is that we use our background and our knowledge of the areas to really find the best possible experience for them so they get hooked on the outdoors.
Beautiful.
Because that's really our biggest goal is getting people to do this more and more often.
Right. Now, in regards to just, you know, you kind of mentioned like it's good, it's healthy for all of us to be outside, and we can look at research and science, it proves all that. You know, if you want to believe we were created or evolved or whatever you want to say with all that, like you can go back into our ancestral history and see, like, you know, living in caves or what have you, more living off of the you know, vegetation and stuff like that. So we, you know, outside of kind of the culture we're living now, we used to spend a lot more time outdoors and foraging and farming and stuff like that. But, you know, just is there maybe like one kind of experience in this kind of full experience of Cairn Guides that maybe you kind of touches your heart? Maybe you brought a group of people or one person that was maybe just struggling with something. Is there maybe one experience that you wouldn't mind sharing that just really you hold on to that has been maybe impactful for you personally, Jordan, through maybe an individual or individuals?
Oh man, it happens all the time.
Right,
so,
right.
It's honestly really hard. Honestly, yesterday, believe it or not, is one that I just felt really was incredible for a variety of reasons. So I'll hit on two real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, man, please.
One that happened in the past that was really powerful was that there was this woman, we did a sunrise hike. Overall, pretty casual thing from the get-go, got this gorgeous view. They felt really motivated because they'd never been hiking before, so I got to show them that. But the really cool thing that was different about this whole experience was that we really, going down, realized that this woman was just terrified of heights. Didn't know it on the way up, but for some reason the looking down was just like, I can't move. Like, I mean, she was paralyzed. And so throughout that, between her boyfriend as well as me, is really working through taking it little by little, giving somebody a safe space to where they can communicate their different anxieties, what they're scared of, and really seeing them push themselves through this thing to the point to where eventually they were in strides.
Awesome.
Going down this thing in a matter of a hike, like, is one of those things that is just kind of like, I mean, I couldn't ask for a cooler experience. So there's that, and then like I said yesterday, I went up to this really cool mountain. It's called James Peak. It's kind of over near the St. Mary's Glacier area, which is really popular. But throughout that, I mean, it was this really interesting woman who was kind of in a transition phase. She has been a doctor, like, you know, hiking with a doctor from Switzerland is something that I couldn't imagine in a million years.
Right, yeah.
Super cool right off the bat, right? But as I got to know her more, like, she was very much in kind of a transition in her life and was really trying to figure out what's next. She kind of had lost interest. And throughout it, you know, we like really pushed ourselves physically, mentally. It was like right on point to where it's kind of, we hit a point to where you start to think about turning around, but being there to really push people to get a little bit beyond, but also be safe and comfortable with like turning around and being like, you know what, like this is a little bit beyond me. But we got to the top. And we really started talking more and more about her, going through therapy, going to India, and how she had this really intense experience while she was out there, and just again, just providing an opportunity for someone to talk about some of their current struggles, but whether it be theoretically or what's going on in their life right then and there. It was just absolutely incredible. I mean, through something as simple as a hike, that lasted, I think it was like 5 hours. I mean, you really get to know somebody really well, and they tell you about some really personal stuff. Mm-hmm. We don't do that with everybody, so don't think that every time we go on, we are, we're getting the background, and it's this really intensive experience. But yesterday was just another one of those just incredible time periods where you get to know somebody's story, and you kind of similar to this podcast, to be honest with you, where you start to learn a little bit more about their culture, their history and everything like that, and then you kind of figure out like where they're at now, and they're like, these types of things, just going out and kind of getting lost a little bit and trusting the future, or at least discussing different goals. That one of the cool things that our company does is these like 30-day challenges to really try to start to kind of like change some gears and get the ball flowing for some folks by just interviewing them and ask them like, what did you think of the hike, and then what's something they want to accomplish in the next 30 days. We've had people who have gone on to, they're like, okay, I started by just doing a sunrise hike for the next month, and after that, they're like, now I'm going to go on and do, 100, I think it was like 170 miles of this like national park by my house and stuff like that. It kind of is used as like a building block. Okay. In terms of like building confidence, helping people feel more fulfillment in life or more satisfied, because it's that just like that baby step forward that we found people just to go on. It's like that's kind of what they needed to really just flip a switch. They're kind of maybe like stuck or what have you, but they've gone and do some really cool things. And it can be as simple as like, I want to read more, or I'd like to hike one other hike, or something super simple, but having someone to really like help them follow through with this and explore the whole idea of pursuing a goal. It's not this like, we don't like contact them like, did you pass or fail? That's not the point. The point is like, what did you learn during this process? What I mean? In like 30 days, maybe something came up to where you had to adjust. We had somebody do this who initially wanted to like run, I believe it was 3 weeks. 3 weeks. They wanted to run about 3 miles a week. Okay. But then they adjusted to where they did 2 weeks every day. And I think they did it like 3 times a week type of thing. Okay. So they did some adjustments, made things a little bit more detailed. Because they kind of learn a little bit more about like how to set goals up so that they are more likely to be successful. But just learning the different things that impact a goal, like there's all kinds of things that come up that are like, I didn't even expect that, or I can do more, or I need to adjust this to kind of, do that kind of thing. So being there to help them follow through with it, but not having, it's not a pass fail, you know what I mean? It's like ultimately we're working on growing, and that could be, hey, I found out I completely lost because I find I didn't necessarily have it in me. Or, they find out that there were some obstacles there that they didn't feel like they could overcome. But that's completely okay. You know what I mean? Like that is just another obstacle and a part of this journey that you have to eventually continue to like push yourself. And like I was talking about with that the TED Talk thing, it's like we're not going to get it right off the bat, but that's okay. You know, like we just kind of keep pushing ourselves and trying to evaluate things that we take away from experiences. And a lot of that transitions into some different hikes I've gone on. People have gotten less than a mile away, and it's like we have to turn around. It's like you hit your limit. I'm there to keep you safe, but also like this is a huge opportunity to really learn from yourself. I had this person who lost, I think between the two of them, they lost something like 80 pounds. It was a couple, and they wanted to reward themselves by tackling a 14er. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about. Thrilled about it, really looking forward to it. And we got less than a mile to the top, and we had to turn around. And I could tell at first that they were really kind of devastated a little bit, but it's like, you've never been this high before. Literally, there's no point in your life that you've been this before. There's no way in the world that you can beat yourself up. This is a monumental accomplishment. It's not about, did I make it to the top? It's about, like, how far have you came since then? Absolutely. I mean, I can't even imagine losing 90 miles, or 90 miles, that much weight. And then going on to accomplish something like that is like, it's unreal. Absolutely, you know what I mean? It's like, I feel good about it, but I can't even imagine being a person like that, and really trying to help people focus on that, like, the growth that they've done since then is so huge. It's similar to like with the kiddos, and when you see that light bulb change, it's a similar situation when you allow people to kind of really process like what they've gone through, and even though maybe they didn't make it to the top, or maybe they got up just fine and they're like, I need to push myself more, that's growth, and that's huge. You know what I mean? That is what allows people to really process what they've accomplished, what they can do, what they can work on. I mean, it's a never-ending thing.
Love it, man.
Never-ending thing.
For sure. We're gonna kind of just head towards the finish line, Jordan. What going back to kind of like your initial discussion of kind of your upbringing, you kind of said something about like kind of going into the woods by yourself and just kind of having that type of experience. And if that's kind of like still the same thing, that's cool. But is there maybe like one or two things that you do for yourself personally, just to kind of like, you know, step out of the busyness and the craziness of your world and having your own business, and, you know, being around people all day, every day, and then doing physical activities with them? It's draining. Like, I know when I'm, you know, not really doing anything physical at school, but just being around kids, being around people all day, talking, having to kind of be on it. It's really draining in all aspects of being a human being. So what do you do to kind of check out and refresh yourself and refocus, and so that you can kind of continue to be the best version of yourself?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is my dog, which I actually thought about bringing to this, but I was like, that'd probably be frowned upon.
No, not in Boulder, dude. The dog would have been welcomed in the library.
Yeah,
so.
No, Mac is my dog. He's about 3.5 now, and he I attribute to, I mean, he completely turned my life around for a whole bunch of reasons, and so he is one of those dogs that kind of like found you, just really drives me to do a lot of things. He comes with me on like all the hikes that I do and stuff like that, but really being able to kind of go off on like a really big hike, because there's times where I kind of get tired of kind of like the regular, like, okay, like we're doing kind of some of the similar stuff.
Right.
Like when I really want to push it, like he can hike, climb, run, like with like the best of them, and like we're very much on like the same level. And I describe to people as like he's like a high endurance dog. So he, you know, he can either hike 15 miles, be happy as a clam, or he can snooze all day. Doesn't matter to him. Just likes to know what's going on in the picture, or likes to know what's going on for the schedule for the day. And so my dog is like huge component to, I mean, 90, I'd say a huge, I can't put a percentage on it, I guess, but a huge portion of like what I was able to accomplish, just because he allowed me to really prioritize, because before I got him, I was very much on a downward spiral. And so being able to have a dog that I'm responsible for, it was kind of like a way to like have a kid, but not have a kid type of thing.
For sure. Yeah.
And so really allowed me to kind of like correct my priorities, and I mean, it just pushes me to a completely different level. And then, like I said, just the getting the outdoors thing is just, I mean, it's like its own religion in a way. I don't go outside that much anymore, just because typically on days where I'm not hiking, I'm typically like relaxing, going to the pool or something like that. But when I do get opportunities, whether it be with like my girlfriend or out with people, like having the opportunity to either go solo or with other people, it's awesome. You know, I get to show people my backyard, or I get to plant, or, you know, spend some time out by myself. It doesn't really matter. I've started to realize that through this process that I actually really enjoy being around people so constantly, because initially actually I was alone a lot of the time. Like I never really hiked with a lot of people. Like I would take people out and show them this really cool stuff, and it was great. But I found that it's like that much more enjoyable when you can share an experience with someone like that, whether it's one person, 6 people, doesn't matter. Having the opportunity to show these like awesome places and share experiences with me, those go far beyond those moments where we're just by ourselves, because it's cool to like take pictures and what have you, and there's a time and a place for that stuff, but, you know, 9 times out of 10 I would much rather really show somebody some of the beautiful things that Colorado has to offer, in just those little secret places that you know nobody knows about or what have you, and really being able to show them, like, you know, this is what it's all about. Because those views and everything like that, they do something different for everybody. Like I was telling you earlier, like some people just want to get outside. Some people want these epic mountain views, whatever it is. If I can like share those memories with people, those go far beyond any kind of like Instagram pictures or you know, whatever is going on these days, or whatever's going to take over next. Like really being able to like share a outdoor experience with somebody is like very refreshing. You know, that experience I had with that doctor yesterday is, those are one of those moments that you're like, this is why I like hike like a maniac and super sore, you know, just kind of on end as far as like my finances go and everything. But it's like, I couldn't imagine a better job.
Right.
You know what I mean? Getting to share stuff like this with people. And so, interestingly enough, I mean, my job is kind of what helps keep me fresh.
And that's great, man. If you have kind of like, you know, something that kind of brings in an income for you and you're passionate about, and it builds you up and energizes you.
Yeah.
I don't think it gets much better than that in life.
I mean,
you know?
it's kind of crazy too, because I was on what's called a 1-to-1 at one point. I wasn't supposed to be doing this, so I hope I don't get in trouble. But we're on these 1-to-1s, and I basically developed a list of, like, you know, kind of things I wanted out of my life. And it was kind of, I wanted to go hiking, wanted to work with my dog, kind of wanted some routine about like how many times a week I get outside. And there were a couple other things like how much money I make and stuff like that. But essentially I wanted to work with my dog, be outside, and make enough money to where I can, you know, so pay the bills. You know what I mean? That was all I was after. And it was kind of crazy how in like a matter of time, I mean, I could check those things off. I was like, that's my life now.
Cool.
And so it really kind of brought that, you know, get dreams mantra back to full circle. Because initially I got to a point where I was like, I have to change something. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? My job at the hospital was not going as great as I had wanted it to, and so that get dreams thing had me sit down and like, what is it? You know, if I could have the perfect life right now, what would I have? And I just made a list. I think there was honestly like 8 or 9 things, and you know, I got, I would say, the vast majority of them. It'd be nice to make a little bit more money, but the fact that I get to meet people from all over the world, work with my dog, play outside all the time, can't imagine.
It's pretty good, huh?
It's definitely not a bad office.
Right. All right, so I know this will be very hard for you to answer because you've seen so many beautiful, amazing places within the state of Colorado. But if there was just one place, not 2, not 3, just one. Okay. If somebody lives in Colorado that's listening to this, or they're listening to this and they want to come visit, if there was one place that somebody must go see, explore, what have you, in Colorado, what would that place be?
Oh, there's too many.
I knew this would be hard for you.
Yeah, I will say though, there a lot of the 13ers out there are some of my favorites, and one of my favorites is Mount Flora.
Okay.
That's a place over by Berthoud Pass that is, I don't know. I think it was one of the first 13ers that I had actually attempted earlier on in my hiking career, whatever you want to call it. And it's just like a gorgeous place to go. I mean, people go there all year round. It's not necessarily one of those places that's like tucked away and super private or anything like that. But, you know, me and Mac, we always enjoy going out there, whether it's winter, fall, spring, summer, what have you. It's an awesome place to go, especially this time of year. I mean, it's named Mount Flora, so you can imagine there's quite a few wildflowers up there.
For sure, yeah.
But it's just a really incredible place, fairly easy accessible, even for folks who maybe aren't in like the best shape. There's still just a plethora to see. You kind of get a flavor for some of the stuff to see out there. And so, I mean, any type of 13er, honestly, are some of my favorite places to go. But cool. Mount Flora definitely sticks out as my favorite.
Love it. All right, last question. What, Jordan, do you want to be remembered for?
Oh man, I would say honestly just making the world a better place. And I feel like the company, the direction that we're heading right now, I feel like we're in a position to potentially make a really, really big positive impact on the world, whether it be through mental health, conservation, or, you know, just supporting local businesses. We have different markets that we are trying to target, but, you know, ultimately I'm just trying to make the world a better place.
Love it.
And I think through our company, if we just kind of keep at it, we'll at least make a dent.
Absolutely.
So that's the big idea.
Cool. All right, so that wraps up our podcast conversation, Jordan, for today. If somebody is interested in kind of Cairn Guides and contacting you and things like that, website, Instagram, wherever you want to kind of send people, just go ahead and please feel free to share that at this time.
Yeah. Like I said, our app is really what we're trying to get off the ground. You know, Cairn Guides is the name of the mobile app. And we're also looking for guides. You know, there's people all over the area. We're trying to get more in like the Southwest Durango area. there is some incredible stuff to do out there. But we're starting in Colorado, so we're trying to introduce people to the awesome stuff that there is to do there. We primarily do like the hiking, trail running, outdoor yoga, as well as nature photography stuff. So that's what we're really trying to get off the ground. But you can also find us on Instagram. Had a couple folks find us through there, or you can find us on our website, www.cairnguides.com. But there's all kind of ways to get a hold of us. But we really prefer people give us a call.
Okay,
My
cool.
number's on there. We're trying to at least get in touch with people, even if you don't want to go for a guided hike or anything like that. We always love chatting with people and at least give them some advice. If they are trying to go out on their own. We've had a couple fatalities, unfortunately, this past week in the Boulder area, and so worst case scenario, reach out to us and we can give you some tips. We're always happy to.
Love it. Now, would you just for the listeners out there, because to pronounce Cairn Guides is tough, but just if somebody's like, dude, like, what are they saying? So go ahead and just spell that so people can find it.
Yes, so it's CAIRN and then guides.com. So cairnguides.com.
Okay, perfect. Just go. People are probably like, what's this? What word are they saying?
Oh, yeah. It's always one of those ones too, kind of like Chautauqua Park here in town. It's kind of funny to hear people pronounce it
right.
And then you let them know how to pronounce it.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened to me, because like in our little introduction scenario there, I was like, okay, dude, like, how do you pronounce this? And it's like, no, that's not how you. So yeah, I was just like, are we at least gotta get the spelling out there, because people are like probably wondering, listening to this, like, what are they even saying? So,
yeah, I say we're hoping it's one of those things that people gradually kind of like learn more about, kind of like Uber and stuff like that, because it's goofy for sure. We probably could have picked an easier thing to pronounce, but we're hoping it's one of those things that becomes memorable, because it's got a reason for it,
For sure.
Because cairns themselves, they're those rocks that people use to kind of like navigate, but we also want to be seen as like guides that really care. Really passionate about
love
what
it.
they do.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So, listeners, I just want to thank you for tuning in to the 127 Fit podcast and hanging out with Jordan and myself. And it's just, your time is greatly appreciated. And I just thank you so much for continuing to listen. And if you want to connect with myself, you can find me on Instagram. That handle is at 127fitness. The personal IG is at QVars. You can find me on Facebook. It's at Quentin Vars. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please subscribe to the podcast and also leave a 5-star rating and review, that would be greatly appreciated. If you think you'd be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance you think would be a great guest or guest, send me an email. Pass this email on to them. It is 127fit@gmail.com. And as you guys find value in the episode and episodes that you are listening to and the podcast overall, if you just do me a huge favor and share the episode or episodes, the podcast again in general, on your Facebook and Instagram stories, that would be greatly appreciated. And please use the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. As you guys know, in the podcast world, the more listeners we get, the more people we can positively impact, and that's the name of the game for the 127 Fit podcast. And then, per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.